The Gashouse gang from KMOX with Kevin Wheeler. I'm Tom Ackerman. Well, would you look at that? We got ourselves a new sponsor right along.
Oh, how about that?
Saliga Van. Game
Yeah.
Day Men's Health. Kevin Wheeler, what are they all about?
Well, I'll tell you this, man. I was out there the other day, and I'm going to be out there tomorrow kind of getting the process started of kind of what I want to target. And it's basically what it says, right? It's men's health. So it can be anything from medical weight loss to vitamin B12 shots and peptide treatments, which, by the way, are kind of hot right now. I might have to explore that depending on what we find with the blood test tomorrow. Testosterone replacement if you want it, ED if you need it. It's just a cool place, Tom. If anybody wants to go out there and visit, and I'll tell you more, right? I mean, we're just getting started with them, and so happy to have them here along with Saliga because we got to grow this thing. This thing is going really well, and I'm looking forward to getting out there and working with Game Day. Matt runs the place in Chesterfield. They are phenomenal. Honestly, Tom, you know how you're sitting there in your man cave right now? It's like that. That's the vibe. You just sit, the lobby is a man cave. Everybody's cool. Everybody's chill. We met a lot of the guys that were there to check out various things, and they were all like, yeah, this place is awesome. I love coming here. So looking forward to it, man. And I'll be out there tomorrow figuring out what I need to do to get bigger and stronger and have more energy now that I'm 53 years old, so I don't feel like I'm sleepwalking at the nighttime.
Yeah, well, I'll be paying attention. I turned 50 this year, so maybe I should
go. Come on out, man. Come on out.
It's great to be able to bring in more sponsors and bring in more listeners and viewers. I mean, this show's picking up. So if you are interested in sponsorship, I'd reach out to us and just get in line now so we can get this thing locked in because I think it's fun. Bernie brought in Saliga Heating and Cooling, a lot of staying power there. So jump in and join us. The Gashouse Gang's fun. This has been a great show, and I've really enjoyed the topics and things are happening in real time. Right as we're talking right now, Doug Armstrong is talking to the media. So we'll keep you informed of what he's saying over at Centene as the team looked really bad yesterday, losing 5-2.
Brutal.
It's a mess. Albert Pujols is a championship winning manager. That happened last night in the Dominican Winter League. Happy for him. A lot of things to get into, Kevin. I think we should really get into the Cardinals a little bit. And then, as I would stay locked in on the Gashouse Gang here, and we'll relay anything we get over for Centene. But, the Cardinals right now, what is this offseason about? Is it about restructuring and flipping the roster? Apparently not. It's all about getting the front office, in place. As I shake my laptop, front office in place. The payroll, I think, might have been a little bit overblown. I mean, I didn't expect – I don't know about you, Kevin, but I didn't expect them to just, slash roster, slash payroll. They didn't bring back Goldie. They didn't bring back Gibby. They didn't bring back Carpenter. We kind of knew that was going to happen, and the Goldie thing we assumed, and Kyle Gibson as well. They didn't bring back Lance Lynn. Those are moves where they saved money. Arenado obviously is the big whale. If they can move him, then they save themselves – well, maybe not $74 million, but a chunk of it.
Yeah, I don't understand why the payroll is that much of a topic of discussion this offseason. I keep hearing from people on Twitter. I keep hearing from people directly sometimes, like, why should they get a pass for cutting the payroll? And I'm like, normally you wouldn't. But when you need to change things up, and you're trying to, and I thought it was really interesting. I'm sure you saw Derek Gould's piece over the weekend, furthering some of the comments from winter warmup that, hey, you know what? It is kind of clear in the decks for Chaim Bloom. You don't want to tie anything up now. So what are you going to do? You're going to do another set of 1 year, $10 and $12 million deals for pitchers that aren't any better than the guys you already have?
Right.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to do that. It doesn't make sense to go get big contracts that are going to lock your payroll up in the future when you have a new guy coming on board to take over next year. And I get it because, I think, Tom, I'm going to try to say this in a way that's not weird, but I think sports fans sometimes think of payroll as a show of affection or lack of affection, right? Like, it's almost like if you don't get me a big enough Valentine's gift, you don't love me enough. It's almost that kind of vibe. Like, if you're not spending, you're not showing the fans you care. But spending isn't the showing of care. The winning is. And they can't keep doing what they've been doing. we've been watching it not work. We've been watching it now gradually erode just a little bit every year for the last 4 or 5 years. And you have to change it. And while you're changing it, it just doesn't make sense to obsess with what their payroll is. Now, on the opposite side of that, because I'm always going to be, I'm going to argue with myself, Tom. I love to argue so much. I argue with myself.
No, you go the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the other side of it is in the next couple of years, it should go back up. Once you've completed this process, once you've cleared the decks of some of the older players and you've sorted out the new ones and the new guys in charge, well, then it needs to go back to being where you've been, which is that top third in Major League Baseball. Sometimes top 10, sometimes it's 13 or 14, but somewhere in that top half, ideally, 10, 11, 12, and you can get to the point where you can do the best of both worlds. I don't think this is becoming the Tampa Bay Rays. This is not what anybody wants. What people want is to be something that's more like, say, like the Atlanta Braves, where, they have a good payroll, but it's not the Yankees or the Dodgers. It's something you can do. And I think that's kind of the idea here. So short term, it shouldn't matter. In the future, I do understand that we all expect it to come back when the TV thing gets settled better and you start playing better and fans start coming back. Well, then, yeah, then it's time after. But I'll say this, Tom. Would you agree with me that it shouldn't, the payroll going up shouldn't have to come after attendance goes up? I think it's more like just get done with what this reset thing has to be and then start working back up, because one of the ways to get attendance up is to have a better team. And sometimes you have to invest in advance of the revenue coming in to get that revenue.
I'd clear up something as well, if you would, because I think a lot of Cardinals fans, and I understand this, I'm not going to shame them into feeling this way, but they look at Bill DeWitt and the reports of his net worth being $4 billion, which puts him in the top 10 in Major League Baseball. I believe he's the second richest owner in the division. Tom Ricketts just barely edging him at like $4.5 billion. And that was like a couple of years ago that came out. Explain why he doesn't just dip into his pocket and pull out 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, 400 million, just go pay guys.
Well, I mean, because it's not sustainable, right? I mean, you can't just keep doing it year after year after year. Even Steve Cohen just found that out. Look what he did. He went right into that deep wallet and he started throwing money around and it didn't work. And now he's not doing it that way. Now he's hired David Stearns and they're still making big moves. I mean, they signed Juan Soto, but they're not just throwing money around randomly. They're doing it with a plan. They're doing it with focus. And I don't think that the St. Louis market in particular, it's not New York, man. The Mets may be the number 2 team in New York, but they're still in New York. And St. Louis is not that. I know you have a regional fan base, so do the Cubs, but the Cubs are also in the 3rd largest market in the country. You can't just spend your way out of it and do it long term. Now, I think it's a valid criticism, Tom, to say when you're in it, maybe go a little extra, right? Maybe go make that big move in season and add the payroll, or maybe you're like, hey, we're this close. Let's go get that big guy and expand the payroll beyond where we're comfortable. I think that's a fair criticism. That's not where we are right now. And I don't think it makes sense. And by the way, all of these owners are wealthy. And, none of them are going to operate that way. And then we have to keep in mind one other thing with the Cardinals, too, is it's an ownership group.
Yes.
The DeWitts are the controlling interest. They're in charge, but this is a group that includes a lot of people, and they all have a say too. They have input. They have their money in the game, and it's not just one person. But even if it was just one person, I don't think I would expect anybody to just throw good money after bad and say, well, we're already at 200 million, but that's okay. We'll go to 250. At some point, you're just throwing money away, and I don't think that money is the focus. Wins are the focus. I don't care what you spend as long as you're good. I don't care if you're the last payroll in the league if you're good. Just make the investment when it's time to make a push, which is what I would say for like the Pirates haven't done, right? The Pirates haven't done it when they've been on that edge of being good. They don't take that extra step. If that's a criticism, I'm on board with that. But it's just you can't just say, yep, I'm wealthy, here's all my money. Because it doesn't, it's just not, again, you have to do something that sustains for a long period of time.
And Kevin, I do know, some of these owners, I mean, maybe not, a tight relationship, but you and I have both crossed paths with a number of them and have interacted with them. I mean, they have deep St. Louis roots. They have money, obviously. That's why they got involved. But they have the deep St. Louis and baseball roots. I mean, these are people who aren't just like, in it for a return on investment. I mean, yes, they do want that. But, they're in it because they love the Cardinals, because they love baseball. That was kind of the beginning of it anyway, this entire ownership group. The Blues actually a little bit smaller of a pool, but they have the same kind of setup where Tom Stillman is not Bill DeWitt deep pockets. He's the chairman, but they have a number of investors who have St. Louis ties who love the team and want it to do well. And are disappointed when things don't go well and do care. So I do think that is important to remember. I mean, this team isn't owned by, out of state, out of St. Louis interests. It's mostly a very tight St. Louis group that will strike when the time is right. But at the time, they've put the halt on all of that. And to go back to your previous point, John Mozeliak is doing his job. His job right now is to set this up for Chaim Bloom, and he's going to take all the hits.
Yep.
He's going to take all the heat like he always has. I'm not saying that he's some, saint for doing that. It's his job.
Right. He's getting paid to do it, paid well.
He gets paid well. But, this is exactly what he's going to do. So, for people who are like, Mo is going to mess this thing up. No, actually, it's over. I mean, Mo's job is done after this year. It is now Chaim Bloom's job, and Mo's job is to make sure this transition goes well for him. So whatever Bloom and Serfolio and crowd want, he is going to get for them.
Yep. And I don't always understand the mindset of super wealthy people. We talk about that a lot on DGS. I don't understand guys like Elon Musk. I don't understand why, when you've already won the game of life, you need to try to keep taking more from people. I don't get that, but that's not the kind of group we're talking about that are owning sports teams. This is not that. And keep in mind that net worth is not the same as cash on hand.
Well, that's also true.
That's your stock options in places. That's the company's owned. It's things that aren't necessarily liquid. Now you can these guys have access to low interest loans that the rest of us don't because they're locks to pay it back. Right. They can get these. So yes, at times you can do that, but you can't. I don't think it's a reasonable thing to say live that way forever and live that way long term. It's not going to be what someone who operates in that world does. It just isn't. And to act like it should be is you're just setting yourself up to be angry. Now, again, I think there are times where you should say, you know what, man, this team is close. Go the extra mile right now. Like, that's a fair thing for a fan to ask, because we as fans, we go the extra mile all the time. We buy tickets and go to games and watch on TV, even when the team's not great. We might complain about it. We might get angry about it on Twitter, but we go and we watch and we care, and we're still doing our part. And I do think that is owed a return at some point, but it doesn't have to be as simple as when there's a problem, spend on the problem, because that's not sustainable. That's how you get yourself in a hole.
The Gashouse Gang from KMOX, sponsored by Saliga Heating and Cooling and Game Day Men's Health. We're very excited to have our sponsors and to have all of you joining us. Go ahead and jump in with a comment on YouTube. We'll be throwing them out there. Our producer, Drew Young, our Kevin Wheeler serves as a producer as well. He'll be picking those out and throwing them up there. So we're happy to answer all of your questions. I look at this team right now, and I say, and I've said this a lot, but I feel even more stronger about it today, strongly. If they hit a little bit, they're on the cusp. If they hit like they should have, they're a good playoff team last year. I mean, I think the pitching was not, the starting pitching was suspect, but they probably would have added at that point, if that makes sense. So, the Cardinals, if they just hit, they are making a move. They're buyers at the deadline. They're adding a starter to their already good bullpen, and they're probably making some noise. The reason this team did not perform last year is because they didn't hit. Period. End of story. That's how I feel anyway. And so I look ahead to this next season and I say, let's take a step back before we all get wound up about how bad they are and say the rotation, the bullpen, first of all, is good, better than good. The rotation has the makings of being decent, actually, if they can stay healthy with some possible reinforcements. I mean, I guess my question to you is, can this rotation, the way that it is set up with some backing, with some of the young guys possibly breaking in, do they have enough to stay afloat here in this 2025 season?
If you hit, yes. Yeah, if you, and one of the things that was a real problem last year was a lack of power production, right? Goldschmidt only hit 22 homers and, was basically a league average hitter. Same thing for Nolan Arenado. So those guys, if Arenado's traded, he's not in that picture, and other guys have to pick it up, right? I mean, Gorman's got to pick it up. Walker needs to be good. Nootbaar's got to stay on. If you can keep Nootbaar and Wilson Contreras on the field and they can play 130 games, that offense is going to take a big boost because those guys can really hit. And Contreras is like legitimately your best hitter, and he was your best hitter last year, but he missed half the season. So, there are paths to this offense being better. I think Brendan Donovan, while he was fine last year, I think he's even a little better than what we saw last year, but we have to keep in mind that last year was also his year coming off of Tommy John surgery or internal brace surgery, the elbow surgery. So there's definitely enough potential there. There's not enough certain there, right? There's a lot of maybes and hopefullys, and we need this and we need that. But if that goes well, it could be a deep lineup that can score, basically all the way down to the 7, 8, 9 spots, depending on how they align things. If you're going to catch Palhes a lot and play Siani in center field, well, your lineup's going to be a lot less. You're not going to score as many runs. But if you're playing some Herrera a good bit, if Nootbaar plays some center field, you'll have a lineup that has threats up and down. The rotation is interesting in that if you look at the absolute highest upside, you got one guy, I think, that can be special of Sonny Gray, right? Sonny could be a Cy Young contender at his best. And at his worst, he's a number 3, right? So he's got the high floor and a high ceiling. The question is, how high is the ceiling for Eric Fedde? Because I think his floor is pretty well established, right? Worst case, I think he's a 4. He's probably a good 3 or a low end 2 if he's having a good quality season. I don't know what Miles is right now, man. And I don't know how we expect much more. I mean, he's a 5 at this point with an upside maybe of a 4 if he can make some adjustments. I don't know what Matt's is. Matt's is a 5 with the upside of maybe a 4 at this point. So then the question becomes, what's Palante's upside? Like, what's the best that we could expect from him? Is last year. And by the way, last year's pretty good. I think last year would put him as a solid number 3 starter. So the question is a 1, 2 3s, and 2 5s good enough on its face? I would say no, with the caveat that we have to make room to see if McGreevy's better than any of those guys, to see if Quinn Matthews is better than any of those guys.
Yeah, I'm with you. Do you think they pull Michaelis if it doesn't go well in the beginning? And do you think that he could even be DFA'd at some point?
Boy, I mean, like the Cardinals have done that, right? They've done that in the past, but they don't do it very often. Can you think of many examples where June or July they took somebody making that kind of money and just sent them away?
No, but this is the different,
No, you're right. Before. Yeah, that's why it's fascinating, because this is a different year.
Because it's like if he's sitting there, throwing meatballs or whatever, and it doesn't work.
Yeah,
the old Cardinals would just keep putting him out there because he's under contract. But the new Cardinals, about this reset, giving people pathways to succeed, they might be like, hey, it's time to cut bait.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, because
I say that about the fisherman Michaelis. I hope he does well.
Look, everybody does, right? I mean, we can talk. We're talking very honestly about what he's done the last couple of years, and there's no denying it. He's acknowledged it. He has come out and said, the fans deserve more from me. He knows what his numbers have been. He knows he's been, 4th worst ERA in baseball amongst qualified starters for the last 2 years. Like, he knows that. Everybody knows it. This is not ripping him. And it's not hoping he fails. It's just saying that if that's happening again, you got to move on, because if that's happening again, this season's not going to be going well. And you need to find out what you have for 2026. You can't go into next year with the same amount of uncertainty about 6, 7, 8 guys that you have now, pitching or hitting. So at some point, if Steven Matz isn't doing the job, he's got to come out, and you got to give McGreevy a chance, and you've got to find a way. If Quinn Matthews is dealing at Memphis, you got to find out, is that guy a guy we can count on for 2026? Because
Absolutely.
if he is, then you're saying, okay, look at this, man. We got Sonny Gray. We got Matthews we can count on. We got Palante. Man, we don't need a lot of pitchers, but we need one good one. And then you go get one good one. And you can play at the higher end of the talent spectrum rather than at the lower end. And you can, and this is kind of the point of this year to me, which is why I don't worry about the payroll. How good is McGreevy? If McGreevy can be your number 5 starter next year, that's awesome. If he's better than that, it's even more awesome. But if he could be your 5 next year and Matthews could be your 4 and Palante can be your 3, Sonny's your 1, you could go out and get a higher end guy. All of a sudden, you got a hell of a rotation. And most of it's not costing you anything.
What do you think of that comment there from William? The Cardinals don't play people on merit. They play people based on prior evaluations, regardless of new evidence. I don't know. I think the Heim Bloom model is a little bit different. I'll tell you what.
That's a good point.
I need to see Quinn Matthews do his thing, of course, but I'm putting him in the 26th rotation right now. And the guys,
I would.
I mean, he's
24. He's a top 100 prospect. He pitched at Stanford, so you know he's a high-quality player at the amateur level, and he blew through the minor leagues last year until he got to AAA. And look, it was only like a few starts at AAA. Yeah, Tom, I agree with you. There's no reason to look at a rotation without him next year. But it does help to get that taste this year and get a little bit more of a vibe. I think what William said there is partially true.
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of examples of that. There are plenty of times. Well, I mean, look, late last year, Miles shouldn't have been in the rotation. I mean, he shouldn't have been. He wasn't pitching well. The team wasn't playing well. They could have spent that time. I understand you don't want to expose people if they're not ready, but you can spend that time finding out, can Gordon Graceffo help us? Maybe if all you find out is, yep, we don't think that guy's a major league starter. So you move him in the bullpen and now you got a new direction. I think that they have been slow to do that. They are slow sometimes, Tom, to adapt when there are predispositions. So as an example, the thing that I harp on all the time, the whole Michael Ziani thing. Look, I know the guy can catch fly balls. I know he's an amazing defender, but you have to hit at least a little bit to be an everyday player. They get stubborn about those things. So in that way, I agree. I don't think that they don't adapt. I think they're slow to adapt. That's probably the way I would put it. Is probably a little slower than a lot of us would like.
The Gashouse Gang from KMOX with Kevin Wheeler. I'm Tom Ackerman. Yeah, I am all about right now looking at younger players. I'm ready to turn Sajaci loose, and I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know where to put him, but
Yep.
I get the Tommy Edman vibes from him, and I think he's a big league hitter who just needs to see as many pitches as possible. And I think he's going to spray the ball all over the place. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I see a really, really good one there. Based on what I've seen so far. I just don't know where to put him as it stands right now.
Well, no, I think that that's the question, but let's assume if you get rid of Arenado, and I shouldn't say it that way, if you're able to move him, it's not about getting rid of him. It is about saving some money and clearing spots for at bats for a guy like that. It shouldn't be very hard to find him at bats in that scenario. If every day, if you want, because if you wanted to in that scenario, Gorman plays third base, Donovan plays second base. You can play Sajaci in left, or you can play Donovan in left and Sajaci at second and put Newt in center. I really want to see how much they're willing to put Newt Bar in center field. If we don't see something like Victor Scott running with the job, he goes out and hits 350 in the spring, and you're like, well, we got to give him a chance. Like, I'm fine with that. If Siani somehow starts hitting the ball harder, maybe he hit the weights in the offseason, worked with a swing coach. I mean, we can be open to all of that. But I don't think that this year should be about, well, we want defense in center field. No, this should be about finding out about players. And if it means sacrificing a little defense to make sure that Sajaci gets 400 at bats so we can, again, what is he? If we see this guy could be a 20 home run, somewhat regular player, how valuable is that for 2026 and beyond? It's incredibly valuable. So There would be at bats for him for sure against left-handed pitching. Whether it's second base, DH, or whatever. And I think you got to find him some other spots too, which with Arenado, if you're able to trade Arenado, that becomes pretty easy.
Kevin, Albert Pujols, his skills, this is the greatest hitter I ever saw. I mean, after 10 years in St. Louis, his skills started to fade. Nolan Arenado, this is year 13 in the major leagues. I mean, it just is what it is, man. Father Time catches up to you. I mean, I could sit there and put Mike Schmidt at third base, but he's old. I mean, he's not going to do anything. But it's, you can't just go on name all the time. I would like to think that Arenado is going to be great again, but it's just the way it is. I mean, I'd like to think that Goldschmidt's going to bounce back and have a nice year for the Yankees, but it just is what it is. I mean, Michaelis falls into that category. Michaelis actually was very good for a period of time, but time catches up to you, and it's time to go with the young guns and see what you got, while mixing in some veteran presence. And that veteran presence now is Donovan and Contreras and Nootbaar and some of these younger guys that are now major league players and are going to become leaders of this team and already are in a lot of ways. Contreras, a little older, is going to be a leader of this team. Here's the other thing, is that young players absolutely 100% want the technology. They grew up on it. They look at it. They pay attention to it. We can sit here and you're not, but I should point it this way. You're not, but I mean, I do sometimes drift away from it. I'm like, okay, geez, I can't read these numbers anymore. I need to base on the eye test. But it's both. The young players, they 100%, don't they want to know what Statcast says, what the analytics say?
If you don't, and I get it, I understand if you're a 38-year-old hitter and you've done things a certain way and had success, you're not going to change that. Totally understand. But yeah, these young guys grow up looking at it. But what I think is confusing is the terminology. And I think one thing that I try to tell people all the time is these are things that every hitting coach has talked about throughout the dawn of time. Ted Williams was talking about these things 80 years ago, just different terminology, right? So when you say things like launch angle, people are like, I don't want to hear about launch angle. Well, all that is what a scout used to call loft. Oh, he's got good loft in his swing. He should hit some home runs. We've always understood these things. These are just measurements now that tell us, is it happening or is it not? And when someone has a long swing, we don't have to guess at it anymore. We can measure it. Think about it this way, Tom. How much easier have the digital maps and the apps that can get you where you want to go from place A to place B, how much difference have they made in the ease of getting around when you're making a road trip or when you're going somewhere? You don't have to guess, well, will Route 10 be better than Route 12? No, the map's going to tell you, well, there's an accident on Route 12, so you want to go Route 10. Like, it's the same idea. The technology is just giving you better data and better information about what's happening in real time, not what's happening in your mind's eye, which can be deceiving. And I saw this yesterday. One of my favorite, by the way, if you guys don't follow Brent Rooker of the A's, he's an awesome follow on Twitter. At Brent_Rooker25. He's awesome.
I actually don't, so I'm going to do that right now.
Yeah, he's fun. He engages with fans. He talks baseball. He's really cool, man. He is a great guy, and obviously he's a very successful hitter. And somebody asked him yesterday, Brett, I'm curious, how often do players like yourself use Statcast? And his answer was every day. Every day. And what they're looking at is my swing getting long? Because we can measure how long your swing is. That's new from last year, and now it's public information. I'm sure they could measure that privately in the past. We can see not only how long is it, how fast is the swing? Am I making good swing decisions? So when you look at something that's, like what they call barrels, right? People talk about barreling a ball. Well, the definition of that based on the Statcast data is the combination of how hard you hit it and whether or not you're hitting it off the ground, whether you're hitting it in the air, right? So it's a combination of launch angle and exit velocity. So when you're looking at that tells you in a kind of quick look, is this guy doing things that should lead to production? And you can be like, yes or no. And that's the data these hitters are looking at to say, all right, now I know what I got to change. And maybe it's swinging at different pitches. We've talked about that a lot with Jordan Walker. He's got one of the best bat speeds in baseball. He hits the ball harder than 95% of major league hitters, but he swings at pitches that you can't handle. And that's the kind of stuff that information tells you. What are you swinging at? Where are you bad? Where are you making mistakes? Again, is your swing getting a little long? These are all things that we don't have to guess at anymore. And we used to have to guess at it.
The Gashouse Gang from KMOX with Kevin Wheeler. I'm Tom Ackerman. You should subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, whether it's live or on replay, hit the subscribe button for KMOX Sports, because then we'll just pop up every single time. So you don't have to search for us. When we come up, we'll pop up. You should subscribe to the Bernie Show as well. Bernie Miklasz, who joins us on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays, will be popping up as well. All of his great videos. I'm looking at the Blues are practicing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was just peeking on that too.
You're looking at that?
Yeah.
It looks like Kurt Russell and Miracle. I mean,
they're bag skating today, buddy.
Looks like Herb Brooks. I mean, he's got them working again.
Again.
So I don't know what's going to happen after this thing, but I'll tell you what, those guys are going to be gassed. Apparently, Pavel Buchnevich is in warmups, reports Jeremy Rutherford and Luke Korak. So he's going to be they'll address what the heck's going on there, because he's out and Brandon Saad was out of this practice last.
Yeah, well, JR just tweeted like 1 minute ago that Saad is on waivers.
Okay, well there you go.
I'm guessing this is what Army's going to be talking about when practice is over. Obviously, talking about Saad being placed on waivers. Sounds like something's up with Buchnevich, right? I mean,
they traded Perunovich.
They traded Perunovich. Tom, I don't know what you think about this. I know that. Right after Jim Montgomery took over, the level of play took a big jump. You won 4 out of your first 5. You got points in those first 5 games. But since then, you're a game under 500 since that 5-game stretch. It's so crazy. Like a week ago, it's like, oh, wow, back-to-back wins against a team you're chasing in Calgary, and you're 1 point out of a wild card spot, and you're building momentum. And now you've lost 4 of 5. Your only win is a shootout win against Vegas, which was an impressive win on the road. But then you follow that with 3 straight losses, and they look like dogs last night. I mean, they were awful last night. No, their coach is talking about energy. Why are we talking about energy? It's the stretch run. You got 30 games left, and you got a group of players that's not showing energy.
They just
those are the coach's words, man. That's not us making that up.
No, I know. And they just don't have elite talent. I mean, I'm sorry. They don't have the elite stars. Yeah. I mean, you can call Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, Philip Broberg's going to be there. Dylan Holloway's going to be there, if not already emerging. And there are a couple others. Jordan Bennington's still the face of the franchise. And when he doesn't perform well, which he gives up a few goals last night and gets pulled, they're going to lose the game. I think, honestly, Kevin, I don't think it's that great of a hockey team. I think they got bailed out early in the year with some Bennington performances that kind of padded their record a little bit. Yep. And now it's rearing its ugly head. And unfortunately, he can't bail them out every night. And they just aren't that great of a team. And, you can sit there and punish them in practice and all that stuff. But I just don't see a really good team there. And, they will be. I would hope that they can acquire some talent, but they're a little tied up in contracts.
Yeah.
And it just is what it is. I mean, now, the key there for them is sort of the Cardinals model, is they're going to hope that these young players emerge into stars and they grow their own stars.
And they have a solid system, right? They have a solid system.
But they need, they need Bolduc to be good. I mean, they need some of these other young guys to emerge and be good. So I just don't see it. I really don't. But, it's gotten to that point. You just said it exactly. I mean, the back-to-back wins over Calgary gave you hope, and then they let you down. And when you don't have an elite player that can bail you out with some key goals, that actually does lift everybody's energy. Like, you go out on the ice in Edmonton and Connor McDavid's playing for you, I assure you, that gives you energy, because you gotta have to rise to his level. So that's the thing to me. I don't see it there. Any last words?
It's not there.
Yeah,
it's not there. I mean, look, if you go back to January 3rd, so it's not quite a month ago, but 3 weeks ago, they were a couple of games over 500. They were, kind of in the same position they were after those 2 Calgary wins. And they were 19-17-4. Well, since then, you're 4-7-0. You've lost 7 of your last 11. And this is the team. This is what they do. They ride that wave up and down. They did it last year. Now, last year they were a little better That was a 92-point team last year, which was not, it was still 6 points off a playoff spot, but it wasn't brutal like this. The year before last, it was a 500 team, 81-point team. And the year before that was an awesome team, but that's whole different roster going back 4 years. I don't see an easy fix here. We have discovered that it's not on the coach. This was never Craig Berube's fault. It certainly wasn't Drew Bannister's fault. And I have full faith in Jim Montgomery. And if they're struggling, it's not his fault. And if they're struggling next year, it's not his fault. This is a bad roster. It's not bad. They're not the worst team in the league, right? They're not picking number one, but it's not a good enough roster. And the guy that has to own that is Doug Armstrong, which is why I'm curious to see what he's going to end up saying today when this practice comes to a close, because he's the guy that built it. Now, he also built the Stanley Cup roster. So if this is not Doug doesn't know what he's doing, he clearly did, because he took this team and made them an elite contender for a long time, and then they won the Cup. And there's going to be a natural fallback to a degree after that. But a lot of the flaws on this roster are bad contracts handed out. Torrey Krug's a bad contract for this team. Pavel Buchnevich was a bad extension. Look, Parayko's playing well this year, and he's had stretches where he looks awesome. But the choice of Parayko versus giving Pietrangelo what he wanted was a mistake. It's just a mistake, and those are big mistakes. And they're not alone. Extension on Shen, probably too long. Probably going to bite you in the ass. Even though everybody loves Shen, he's one of the leaders of this team that does actually try to get things going, but he's getting older, and he's not the player that he used to be. So I've said all year, I don't see an easy way out of it. I don't think it's a 10-year thing, but you're going to have to just play through and get rid of some of these contracts and hope your kids take up these spots. And when you have cap space again, you can make some moves.
Let me close with some college basketball. The big three in this area, you got 18th ranked Illinois. They're good, although they got drilled by Maryland.
How about that?
Holy smokes.
Did not expect that.
I watched that game. That was crazy. And then Mizzou takes it to Ole Miss, which was really impressive. Ole Miss is really good, and Missouri's really good at home in a very, very tough conference. They're ranked 20th in the country.
Yeah.
And then there's SLU. SLU is interesting. They've got a chance to show us what they're made of this week.
Big week.
Huge home games, and if they want to make the tournament, they need to be seated high in this A-10 tournament so they have a chance. And they've got to protect home court, and they're going to be dogs in both games, I think. They're going to be an underdog tonight against VCU, a team that absolutely slaughtered them a couple weeks ago, 78-62, but it wasn't that close. And then they're going to play Dayton on Friday night. Two huge games at home. Now, SLU does have one thing going for it. They do have an elite player. Robbie Avila is, I'd say, one of the top 25, 30, 40 players in the country. He's that kind of unique talent. Maybe the best passer in the country in terms of big men.
Yeah, his best big man for sure as a passer.
He's got a great feel for the game. And, they're going to have their supporting cast around him playing really well. Just the weird thing about them is they're not making shots. And they're defending not bad, but they haven't been able to shoot it very well. And that's going to lead to some problems. But the Billikens have undeniably their biggest game of the year tonight against a team that embarrassed them, VCU.
Yep, and then Friday, the follow-up with Dayton. I mean, this is the biggest single week of the regular season. And I know I'm not trying to be hot takey here, Tom. I just think it's the reality. These are important games, and obviously, winning them helps your seeding for the A-10 tournament. But the Billikens, even if they win both of these, they're probably not getting into the tournament based on regular season achievement. No, they're gonna have to win the A-10 tournament. But you can learn a lot about what that will take this week. You know what I mean? If you go out and play well against these teams and show that you know how to beat them, or there's a way to attack them that you can pull off, that's a big deal. That'll give me some hope if they do it.
Me too. I think that they can, but things are going to have to go right. They're going to have to keep those five on the floor. No foul trouble. Gibson Jimerson's going to have to hit his shots, and Swope will have to hit his, because I'm pretty sure Avila is going to play well. He's playing as well as he has in his career. Josh Schertz will have the plan. One thing I would be shocked if SLU isn't extra aggressive on the boards tonight. I think they will be physical. Sure, and I think they will try to take it to VCU, embarrassed about how that went down in Richmond. But we'll see. Kevin Wheeler, always a treat to be with you, my friend. You're on the DGS this afternoon.
Getting ready for the next show. Let's go.
Yeah, Billikens at 6:45 with Rammer and Earl. Matt Pauley before that. We will see you tomorrow. Matt will be with me. Thanks to our new sponsor, Game Day Men's Health, Saliga Heating and Cooling. With Kevin Wheeler, Tom Ackerman, this has been the Gashouse Gang.